Hi guys. So before we get into this, I had told you in the last video that I was going to do or I was going to run through a sample paper with you. It's from a former student. And I'm also going to run through the rubric for 2.2 with you guys. But before we get into that, I wanted to remind you again to please do the SSOI surveys for the course. I can't see the results of the survey unless at least 80% of you actually participate in it. I use this information to shape my own teaching and to, have access to you guys' opinions. Y'all's opinions matter to me, and they're totally anonymous. You can choose to leave comments or you can just go through the questionnaire. It's short, takes 10-15 minutes at the most. Usually students are done with it in 5. And it would mean a lot to me if you guys would do it and I could have access to that information. You can find the instructions on how to do the SSOI surveys on Blackboard under course docs. It's super simple. You basically just click a link and then you click through a bunch of questions and answer them. And that's that. Let's see, what else was I going to remind you of? Oh, please don't forget too that if you are interested in having a conference with me this week, I've yet to hear from anybody. I understand that a lot of you are busy and all that, and you may not have time to do these conferences, which is fine. They're in no way, shape, or form required. But if you can, take advantage of them, I strongly suggest that you do. If you want a conference with me, I probably, well, if you were to send me an email, I could probably do it today. Might be, later tonight. But I'm not going to conference with anybody after 5:30. I'm sorry. I'm just not. Then tomorrow, for the most part, I should be relatively free to do a couple of conferences. Friday, I should be totally free and clear. I'm hoping to get freshman grading done by Friday, because about the time that I get done with them, you guys will be turning in papers that following Tuesday. So, it's, if you're a teacher, all you do is grade, basically, which is fine. I enjoy grading, but it can become tiring. So anyway, to end my digression, if you want to have a conference, let me know. I have pretty flexible times that I could also get with you on the weekend or maybe Monday. Oh, excuse me, as a last minute conference if the weekend or something doesn't work for you. But okay, with all that being said, we're going to go through this paper. A former student of mine wrote this paper. One of the first things that you'll notice is it's a bit longer than you guys are required to write. It's a bit more in depth than what you guys are required to write. That's because obviously last spring when I taught this student, that we didn't have a COVID crisis, and instruction went on as it was supposed to. So they actually had to write a longer paper that had more sources than you guys are required to have. So when you see this sample, please don't think that you have to have as many sources as the student has or have the link that the student has either. But I did go back in and I changed the formatting so that the paper meets the current APA, because the student wrote her paper under the 7th edition and you guys should be following the 8th edition. Please hear me on that. I still have a few of you who were using the old edition of APA recently and who were using like a weird mixture of the new version and the old version. You need to be following 8th edition MLA, gosh, 8th edition APA, not MLA. I've been talking to freshmen all day that are following MLA. Which the best resource to find accurate information on the new edition of APA is Purdue OWL, of course. You can just Google Purdue OWL APA. It'll come up. It's quick, it's easy, it's pretty good reference. Even though most of you, I will say, did very, very, very well on your annotated bib and research proposals with both in-text citations and with your references on your annotated bib. I was very, very impressed for the most part. And a couple of you had those smaller errors that I pointed out, which, a small error I'm not nearly as concerned about as you not having in-text citations in your entire paper or something like that. But yes, with all that being said, please do follow the newest version of APA. So this sample paper is now in the newest version of APA. It's one of those things that you can pretty much verbatim follow this formatting and you're going to know it's right. I made sure to make everything perfect. So I'll go through what those are. I'm also going to go through the bigger aspects of this paper that the student got right that earned her a good grade. I don't remember exactly what I gave this student, but I do believe it was an A- paper. It may have been a B plus. It may have been like an 89 or a 90. I'm not. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I do remember that she did well, and I've been through this paper, and she did do well. It's a good paper. It's not perfect, but it's a good paper. So we're gonna go through the big things that she did right, and we're gonna go through formatting a lot because I really want you guys to really nail this formatting. And just for the record, part of the reason that I'm being such a stickler about formatting is regardless of what discipline you're in, if you do not know how to cite things and how to format things to follow, the stipulations of your discipline, the style of your discipline, you're not going to be taken seriously in your field. You can't turn in sloppy work to be published. And an editor is going to look at a paper one time and see that it's not, that it's messy, that it's not following formatting very closely, and they're not even going to look at the content. They're immediately going to see that and say, this is trash. This person has no idea what they're doing. So there's a reason I'm being hard on you guys about formatting. The more you nail down formatting and the closer you get it to being perfect, the more seriously people are going to take you from the get-go. Because it's like I said, if you turn in something for publication and it's messy and it's not formatted correctly, that publisher is going to look at it, give it a half a glance, and throw it in the trash, basically. I know this speaking from experience. I've worked as an editor for a long time, and I mean, there were times that I would read professional writing and be shocked that this person had a career because it was so, messy. And so that's why I'm such a stickler on you guys. I'm not trying to be a pain in the ass, and I'm certainly not trying to be, overly critical of your, your mistakes and your formatting. I'm trying to give you that tough love to push you into, doing just the best job that you can, with your formatting so that, people will take you seriously. Yeah. I mean, it's no different than, think about if you were going to go to a business seminar, right? You're going to go into this seminar and somebody's going to come in and tell you about what it takes to run a successful business. If that person walks in and they're wearing like baggy sweatpants and a t-shirt that's stained with mustard and they look like they haven't showered in 3 days and you can kind of smell them from where you're sitting or something, you're not going to take that person. You're not going to look at that person and say, you're a successful businessman. It's no different in your writing. If your formatting is totally wonky and it's messy, people are going to look at it and say, this person is not a professional. So, the more nuanced your formatting is and the closer it is to perfect, the more likely people are going to say, oh, this is a professional person. This is a professional writer. Or a professional within the field. So just keep that in mind. That's why I'm being weird about your formatting. It's not because I'm trying to be mean or anything. I really want you guys to learn it because it makes you look professional and smart. So, and that's what you want in academia and in your own field. So, okay, that's my spiel about formatting. We're going to look at this paper. All right. So first of all, here's your title page. Some things have changed since the last edition of APA. For example, all you have in the header is your page number. Do remember that your header information should be consistent with your font in the paper itself. So this needs to be in Times New Roman 12-point font. That's just a good rule of thumb anyway. You guys should go through and set up so that your documents are automatically in Times New Roman 12-point font, which if you want to know how to do that, just really quickly. If you're in Word, I don't know how to do this on a Mac off the top of my head, so you can Google it if you have a Mac. But if you're in Word, if you come up here to font and you hit this tiny little arrow that's down here in the corner, hit that and it's going to bring up this menu. So mine is already set this way. It's going to be in Times New Roman, regular style, 12-point font, right? So if you come down here, there's this button that says set as default. You hit that, and then you tell it all documents based on the normal template. So Word is programmed to automatically make documents in the normal template. So once you do this, it means that every single time that you pull up a Word document, it's already going to have it preset to be in 12 times Roman 12-point font anywhere in that document, including the header. So you don't have to worry about going into the header and actually changing the font. It will automatically make it times Roman. Just a little piece of advice. Okay, so other new things with APA. So the new title page, you're coming down about 3 or 4 spaces from the very first margin, the top of the page, and you're putting the title of your paper in bold right here like this. So the title of this paper is Sexism in the Aviation Industry. You guys know my rule about titles. You want to try to have a title that is unique and pretty clear. So it's pretty obvious if you were to just give this title to someone in the street, they would know that this is going to be a paper that looks at sexism in the aviation industry, you know. So you want to have a title that is unique and that clearly shows what you're going to talk about. Some of you have asked, and the answer is yes, you can absolutely use the same title that you use for your proposal. You don't have to come up with a new title. Even though I would be careful if your title for your proposal is like blah, 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 proposal, or if it said proposal and then had a colon and had the title. You don't want to keep proposal in there, obviously, because it's no longer a proposal. Now you're writing the actual paper. Okay? All right, so then after that, you're going to enter a couple of times past your title, and then you're going to come down. This should be your name. I put former student because it was easier to just say former student and take her name off of this completely. Then you're going to say Department of English, comma, East Carolina University, English 2201, writing in the disciplines. A couple of you were putting your own departments, like you were putting Department of Criminal Justice or something like that. You want to put Department of English. The new rule in APA is that you're putting the department of the paper of the class that you're writing the paper for. So in this case, it's an English class. It's in the English department. Now, were you writing a paper for your criminal justice class, it would say Department of Criminal Justice, and then you're going to have that class. But remember that the department that you're listing here should be the department that the class that you're currently writing the paper for belongs to. So in this case, you're going to put Department of English, and you're going to put English 2201, writing in the disciplines. Then it's my name, Miss Sarah Parrish, and then the date. In this case, I just put the due date of the paper, which is perfectly fine. You can do the same thing. So you can come in and copy and paste all of this, throw it in your title page, put your own actual title in, put your name here, and the rest of this is going to be exactly what you want it to look like. So you're welcome to do that, obviously. All right, so then we got our abstract. Of course, you're going to center the abstract title, bold it just like this. Abstract is going to be 150 to 250 words. I think this one is 162, so perfect. And then you're going to have your keywords. So immediately after your abstract, you're tabbing over one time, putting keywords capitalized in italics, followed by a colon, and then your keywords themselves, which are not in italics, they're going to be just regular words. You guys know this drill. You've done this a million times. Just don't forget to do it, you know. And you want to have, 3 to 4 keywords, 3 to 5, however many keywords you want. Maybe I will make sure that you have at least 3. All right, so when we get into the body of the paper, we're doing the same thing over again. We're putting the title of the paper in bold, top of the page, centered. Okay? Super simple. So I'm not going to read you this entire paper. Number 1, because it's long, and number 2, because you can read. If you're interested in sexism in the aviation industry, then by all means, this is a good paper to get you started on that topic. But we are going to look at the big elements that I'm looking for in these papers. So let's just read this introduction. In the aviation industry, there are many problems that could occur with a plane, but sometimes the problems start with the pilot. Many tests have been done to make sure flight instructors are properly teaching pilots and testing their risk behaviors. Women today are still differently treated by male pilots by both co-workers and passengers. Since there have been no cases in history where women have performed worse than men, women pilots shouldn't be treated any differently. A pilot's job is to fly a plane and get all passengers safely to their destination. If a pilot can get the job done, he or she should be respected. The aviation industry should invest in the promotion and protection of female pilots through shifting the opinion of their employees to better accept female pilots. The implementation of courses that would teach discouragement of sexist behavior would help both women in and outside of the aviation industry. Okay, so these last 2 sentences are her thesis. I will say one thing about this introduction. I think there's a little bit of redundancy in here. And I also think that there's a little bit of vagueness in here when she's saying women today are treated differently by male pilots, or treated differently than male pilots. She means female pilots specifically, not just women. But this language implies that all women are treated differently than male pilots, and that's kind of a strange sentiment. So just be careful. I mean, I know what she's going for, but just be careful in your introduction that you're not straying too far from your main point. So here's her thesis. The aviation industry should invest. First of all, aviation industry. That tells you right there who she's addressing, who she's talking to. She's suggesting these things to the aviation industry. So she's got an audience that is established pretty quickly. So the aviation industry should invest in the promotion and protection of female pilots through shifting the opinion of their employees to better accept female pilots. Okay? So that's what she wants. The implementation of courses that would teach discouragement of sexist behavior would help women both in and outside of the aviation industry. Okay, so she's wanting the aviation industry to implement these courses that would basically be, a sexual harassment. It's not the right term, but a course that is about inclusivity in the workplace, essentially. That, female pilots are just as capable as male pilots, blah, 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 blah. So then what this student does, and this is a great thesis. This is a thesis that she argues throughout this paper. It's clear if you took this thesis and you handed it to somebody on the street with nothing else but this thesis, they would know what this paper is about and what this paper is arguing. They would also know who the intended audience of the paper is. So all of those are good things. Okay. So then she moves into her body paragraphs. And again, I'm not going to read all these to you because it's just too much. But you'll notice that consistently she has topic sentences. So here, female pilots score higher in some areas than men and vice versa. So here she's clearly going to talk about performance of these pilots. Then when she comes down here, sexism shouldn't be taken lightly in any field. So this is kind of wrapping back into her thesis of this would improve things not only in the aviation industry, but also for women in general. Which she didn't do a great job of transitioning between her previous paragraph and this paragraph, but at least the topic sentence is there. All right, so here she has, in addition to discrimination against female pilots, some female passengers are treated differently than men, So this is a good transition because she's saying, in addition to the discrimination of female pilots, which she had been talking about in her last paragraph, she moves into the treatment of female passengers. Yeah, so same thing here. Though multiple research articles have stated these opinions of different women in the industry, there are some stories of women who feel differently. So again, here in this previous paragraph, she's talking about the opinions of women who feel as if they're being treated unfairly, and now she's going to move into the treatment of women who think that they're not maybe treated as unfairly, which is also good. But so on and so forth. So you can kind of look into that yourself, how she does topic sentences and transitions, and she does pretty well in the majority of the paper. So I wanted to pause for just a second to say a couple of things about this paper. In addition to having good topic sentences and a very well-rounded and well-argued thesis, the student also goes into she very briefly, I should say, goes into some of the counter-arguments that are present in her field, which is essentially that some women think that calling out the sexism in the industry is only going to worsen it because then men feel victimized. I think that's bullshit, but that's not my opinion. Is not relevant in this particular situation. What I was going to say about counter arguments is, first, you guys have a limited amount of space to write this paper in. This paper is originally 6 to 8 pages, I think. And I cut it back for you guys because of the COVID situation and because of all the other things that you have going on. And because I wasn't aware of how much access you had to actually getting good research. With that being said, you are more than welcome to go into the counter argument of whatever you're discussing in your papers. However, if you decide to explore that counter argument, you might want to, you definitely want to make sure that you're keeping it kind of short. Because the problem with counter arguments is that if you present a counter argument, you then have to deflect that counter argument as well. So you might present a counter argument that has a valid point, but you have to do more than just present that counter argument. And one of the biggest downfalls that I see students sometimes is them introducing a counter argument without then arguing against that counter argument again to keep their original topic and their original thesis, strong. Because you can't just bring up the opposite viewpoint without then, breaking it down a little bit. So for example, in this paper, this student is talking about this sort of other opinion from women that talking about sexism openly in the workplace would maybe make certain men feel victimized, which in turn is going to worsen the sexism because then the men are going to be angry at the women or, think that the women are deserving some kind of special, or think that the women are receiving some kind of special treatment from, the airlines themselves or, their bosses, whoever. So you can present that opinion. And you don't even have to discredit that opinion, because what this student does in this paper is, rather than saying those women are wrong, what she does is say, while this is valid, I think there are more women who agree that talking about these issues is the only way that we're going to solve these issues. So you don't have to completely destroy the counter argument, or you don't have to completely dismiss it and say that it's totally wrong, because more often than not, things are not so black and white. But if you are going to bring up that counter argument, you do have to say something against it that is going to make sure that your thesis is still intact. You don't want to bring up a counter argument that's going to totally destroy your thesis. So just be careful about that. Let's see. Other than that, because again, I'm not going to go through, my background's really cool, huh? I'm very nerdy. I'm not going to go through this entire paper with you because it's you all can read, and if you're that interested, you can go and do it yourself. But I do want you to pay attention to the things that she's doing right. So let's skip down to the conclusion really quickly, and then we'll talk about formatting again. And again, this paper is much longer than y'all's needs to be. So in her conclusion, she says, after doing research on the opinions and experiences of passengers, flight attendants, and pilots, it has been made clear that most female pilots and airline employees feel they are treated differently based on their gender. Sexism is a problem that reaches far beyond just airline companies. Regardless of what position an employee holds with a company, whether they be male or female, they should be treated the way all employees are treated, with respect. If passengers, flight instructors, pilots, etc. are educated more on these issues without any bias, then the aviation industry will cause a lot of changes in society by helping to integrate women in all areas of work, especially male-dominated fields. So she's returning to her thesis by saying, we need to start tackling this problem, not only in the aviation industry, but in other male-oriented fields and in the world in general. I mean, everything needs to come down to, regardless of what gender you are, you're just treated with respect. Feminism is so often painted as this man-hating, we want to rip the heads off of men, when really what the core of feminism is asking for is equal treatment. It's a little known fact that most feminists believe that everyone who is of age and physically capable should be drafted if there's going to be a draft, and I totally agree with that. It's not about us having privileges that men don't have. It's about leveling things out. But God, I'm not going to go into a conversation about feminism right now, because Lord knows y'all will be here all day. So the other thing that I wanted to point out to you guys is the the in-text citations throughout this, they're perfect. They're spot on. She does not have a single mistake in her in-text citations, and that's because I did them. They were previously in the old version of APA, which she did a very good job. Her APA from last year was close to being perfect. Oh, look, I'm talking all this shit. I do have a mistake in here. There should be a P dot right there. Page numbers. So if you want to see what in-text citations look like that are nearly perfect, because I just realized I have a mistake, this is a good paper for it. And the references page on this should also be in perfect condition. I'm 90% sure about that. The other thing that's cool about this reference page is that a lot of these references are from different places. So this first reference is from a magazine. So if any of you guys are using trade magazines or popular magazines, you can follow this this as your example. This is from, most of her citations are from scholarly journals, just like y'all's are. So here's from a scholarly journal. This is what your setup is going to look like. You know, of course, author's name / names, the year of publication. If you have the month and the date, you want to list that too, but like she does right here. But you don't have to have the year and the date. Most importantly, you have the year. The title of the piece, where we're only capitalizing the first word or any word that comes after a colon. In this case, we don't have a word that comes after a colon, so only the first word is capitalized. Period after your title ends. Journal name in italics. The volume number of the journal in italics, and then immediately followed by, in parentheses and not italicized, the issue or edition number, or sometimes it will be listed as number as well. And then here are your page numbers, and that's that. So that's what a journal source looks like. That's going to be what that looks like. And this actually is from a website. So if any of you are using websites, this is what that looks like. So it's kind of funky. You got the author's name, year of publication. If you have the day and the month, again, great. If not, great. So what happens is a little bit differently. If you're citing from a website, you take the title of the article that you're reading and you italicize it. And then you list the website name without italicizing it, which to me is strange and backwards, but whatever. Then your period, and then you just put the URL. So we no longer have the retrieved from language or the retrieved on with a date. You don't need any of that anymore. That stuff has changed. So this one is a website, and this one is also a website. So if any of you are getting information from websites, here's how to do that. And again, you know, you're required to have 6 sources. This paper has a lot more than 6 sources. That's because the requirements were different. So please don't see this sample and then freak out and be like, oh my God, there's so many sources. Because it's you're not meant to have that many. You're meant to have 6 minimum. So the 4 from your, in theory, the 4 from your annotated bib, and then 2 new sources. So that's that. I'm going to also make a video in just a few minutes of going through the rubric. I'm going to make it in a separate video because I'm almost up to 30 minutes, and it takes a long time for these videos to upload if you go past a certain point. So look for that rubric video coming up shortly, and I'll see you guys soon.